Is it recording?
Hello, hello, hello.
All right, I think it's recording. Here we are on The Blind Man in Black, and I'm here with a very special guest, author of A Director Prepares and an Actor Performs, playwright, theater professor, and Tony Award-winning director, Mel Shapiro. Thank you so much for being here, Mel.
Hey, thank you for asking me.
Yeah, it's an honor and a pleasure. And we should let everybody know that's watching and listening that how we met is I attended the UCLA School of Theater, Film, and Television and got a master's degree in directing. You were a very critical part of that process as one of my admired professors. So, how are you holding together through all this shit, this pandemic and everything?
Well, the only way you can hold together is to hold together or fall apart.
Right.
And luckily, we got our vaccination, the first one, my wife and I,
Excellent.
and we got the second one in early March. So,
Does that bring you a little bit of relief?
yes, a great deal, a great
Yeah.
deal. And I don't know, we'll live through it, I hope, although these mutations now are very serious,
Right.
scary. But we've been very careful. And it annoys us when we see people who are not careful. And we just resist joining the community of safety. But maybe they're narrowing now. But then again, uh, I guess for every person who is finally wearing a mask, two other people don't want the vaccination. So
Yeah.
it's insane.
Yeah. Hey,
But
could you? I'm having a little bit of difficulty hearing you. If either you could get closer a little bit, or if just talk just a little bit louder.
is okay. Is this
Yeah.
better?
Oh, that's perfect.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. So, yeah, it's a very precarious time, and I don't know. I don't know. I'm having apocalypse fatigue myself. So, um, I have the you know issue of when I go out, I have no idea what the fuck people are doing. I don't know if they're wearing masks. I don't know how close they are to me. So, it adds a whole level of confusion and bewilderment. But yeah, it's some crazy shit. But let's talk about you. Let's start at the beginning. Let's talk about the formative years. What happened and where are you from and what are the influences that made you the person that you are today?
I was born in Brooklyn a long time ago,
Mhm.
and my my whole childhood I was dreaming of getting out of Brooklyn. That's all I really wanted.
Right.
And I think what saved me was I became a big fan of the theater.
Mhm.
And when I was a teenager, I had some friends, and we would go on the subway to Broadway and see shows. And I really was smitten by it. The first show I ever saw was The Rose Tattoo.
Mm.
And then my first musical was Kiss Me, Kate. And I can't believe that. I think the ticket for A Rose Tattoo at Broadway balcony was like $2.35.
Those
So
days are long gone.
long gone. And then as my desire for leaving Brooklyn, I got an opportunity, which was to join the Army.
Hmm.
Um, my friend and I, he said one day, "Hey, let's join the Army. We can get the GI Bill." And I said, "Let's go to college." And I said, "Oh, yeah, let's do it." So I did it, and I spent a year at Monterey at the Army Language School. And I was trained as a Korean interpreter. And it was not a language I wanted to do, but anyway, I was lucky enough to go to Japan, and I never had to go to Korea.
Ah.
So after a year in Monterey, which was like a country club, I
Mhm.
ended up 2 years in Tokyo. And in Tokyo was a group called the Amateur Dramatic Society, which was a group of Americans, British, Australian. They all had either an embassy or a legation. And many of the people who worked in those fields at the time had been in the theater in their country. So when they took up service in the diplomatic corps, they created a theater. And a fellow who was in the Chinese Mandarin section, I was in the Korean section, we used to talk about theater all the time. And he said one day, I'm going to be directing Blithe Spirit. Why don't you be my prop manager? And oh, great. What's props? So he showed me what props was. And I would have to, collect all the props for the rehearsal. And he used to ask me, he was starring in it, and he would directing it at the same time. And he would ask me questions after the show. Well, what do you think of that? And what do you think of this sort of thing? And I started telling him what I thought. And I didn't know where all this stuff was coming from out of my mouth. But he said, you know what? I think let's get you off props and you can be my AD. I said, what's an AD? He said, it's assistant director. And these people were skilled people, people who had been in theater for years in their own countries. And as a result of my being an AD, I was asked to direct the next production at DADC. So I had my day job in the Army as a Korean interpreter, translator. And my night job was directing a play. I think the first play I did was The Diary of Anne Frank.
Mm.
And I remember I had seen it on Broadway. So I have no idea how I did it. I had no idea how I organized it. Or there I was, this young kid, and I was telling everybody what to do on stage. And that went very well. And while I was in my 2 years started to, whittle away, and I was planning to go to college because I was going to get out of the Army soon. And a mate in the same barracks with me on the same floor had gone to the Carnegie Institute of Technology in business. And he said, did you ever hear of the drama department at Carnegie? I said, no. He said, it was the first in the country. And it's a great department. I'm going to go back to business school and you go to theater school and we'll room together. And I said, oh, great. So I was accepted and I went to Carnegie and I was there 4 years, of course. I got my bachelor's and my master's. And then I moved to New York. And one day I had a job, a series of these office temps. And I was working at a bank. And I decided to take the day off. I was sick of everything. And the phone rang. And it was Zelda Fitch-Handler, who was the creator and artistic director of Arena Stage in Washington, D.C. And she said she had heard about me and would I like to come to Washington and be an assistant. And I was so excited. But I said, well, how come you called me? And she said, well, I heard various reports from various people about you. And I said, I took the day off work. And if I hadn't taken today off, if I hadn't been here to hear the phone, what would you have done? She said, oh, I have a list. I would have gone down to the next person.
Wow. That is amazing. I mean,
It was amazing. And it was amazing. Well, anyway, I was living with my now wife of many years, who was an actress, and we went down to Arena. And I became, after a while, one of the resident directors. And I did that for a couple of years. And it was after that, oh, I went to the Stanford Rep. We had a marvelous company. It was all actors from the Actors Studio. Stanford got a Rockefeller grant to start a professional theater on campus. And that was a tremendous experience working with those people. And while I was there, I was asked by somebody, a man who was the head of the drama department at the time, Ted Hoffman. He was starting the NYU theater program, which morphed into the Tisch. No,
Tisch School.
Thank you, Tisch School of the Arts.
Right.
And he said, come to New York. And I said, I don't want to go to New York. I want to direct. He said, you'll direct in New York. I said, how can I, who would hire me? So anyway, he convinced me to go to New York, and I was to teach directing. And I never taught before. And once I got to New York, and he said, oh, by the way, yes. I said, well, how many classes do I have? What do I have to do? Who do I teach? He said, I'll tell you in a minute, but he said, you know what I really would like you to do? I'd like you to be the head of acting. I said, Ted, I am not trained as an actor. Here you have all these great acting teachers in New York City, these legends, and a little schlepper by like me. Well, what do I know?
It's I'm getting the sense that your early years were just a series of green lights.
It was incredible, a series of incredible luck. And it was a series of green lights. And as a matter of fact, another coincidence was we moved into an apartment, and we got a telephone, of course. And the first call when the telephone was installed was, hello, is this Mel Shapiro? I said, yes. He says, this is Joe Papp. And oh my God, how did you get my number? I just had the phone installed. So, he says, I get anything I want. So I worked with Joe for about 6-7 years, and I was teaching at NYU, and I was doing shows at Lincoln Center and other places, and teaching, acting, and directing.
Well, we'll come back to this, but I want to understand kind of where the drive came from. Now, was it family members that took you to the theater early on and exposed you to it? Were your parents involved in the theater, or how did you, develop a love?
I just, I was very fascinated as a kid when I was a teenager about theater. And I don't know why, I was very focused on it. And I used to love to read the ABC listings of all the plays on Broadway at the time. And I was too young to go to them, like Arsenic and Old Lace and Harvey and Oklahoma and stuff like that. And so I was primed to see theater. And it came out of a couple of friends, buddies of mine in high school, and we decided to go see a Broadway show. And that's all I needed was one show. And I was going to be in the theater.
Was there one show that really resonated with you? They were like, this is why I'm doing this. Was there something?
Everything I saw resonated. Everything.
Wow.
I was like a dream come true. And so I was fortunate because it was almost like an apprenticeship.
Mhm.
That's why I urge kids who want to go in theater to see theater. And I was so fat. The other great piece of fortune actually was when I was in the Army and I took the Army language test. It's like they make up a language and you have to answer questions and you become fluent in another language, which was like a double talk, but I passed the test.
Mhm.
Now, the day I was supposed to get my assignment, I ended up with having KP, that's kitchen police.
Mhm.
And that day, every language in the world that you would want to study was available. The next day, when I took the test and passed it, there were only 3 languages available. I said, oh, God, no. So the 3 languages were Serbo-Croatian, Czech, and Korean.
Mhm.
And I thought, I'll probably go to Europe
Mhm.
anyway one day. I'll go to Asia. And that was the decision that got me to the Korean language school and got me to Japan, and Japan got me involved in the English-speaking theater.
It's like you couldn't escape the path of theater. There was no way.
Oh no, and I was saying, and since I was doing it when I was in the Army, since I was directing shows for the Amateur Dramatic Society, and I
Mhm.
became a big shot. I did the Diary of Anne Frank and 12th Night. Oh my God, how did I do 12th Night? And yeah, I met the fella, had my in the same barracks who got me to Carnegie. And when I was at Carnegie, it was run by a guy named Ted um, Ted Hoffman, and he became my mentor. He really got me the job at. He was the probably the spokesman that got Zelda Chandler to call me, and
Mhm.
he got me the job because at Stanford, and then he brought me to NYU.
Wow. So I want to go back just a little bit. So what was it about Brooklyn that made you want to leave? Was it just a desire to see the world, or what was that?
Well, I didn't have a very happy home life, and I just had to get out. My mother and stepfather didn't get along,
Mm.
and my stepfather was very hard on me.
I'm having a little bit of trouble hearing you, just a little bit louder.
I was saying my stepfather was very hard on me,
Right.
and I felt my mother was kind of indifferent. So I got out. You know, I'm amazed that kids don't get out anymore. If they do it in a different way. But
Yeah.
they get out, they come back to college, and they stay with the family. I did not have that kind of family that I wanted to be around.
Yeah.
So I was always an outsider I felt an outsider to my own family.
Hmm.
Um, and I can't imagine what would have happened to me if I stayed. Um, so that was the impetus. It was very
Well, I mean, it just seems like there was no escape. You had to be in the theater in some
yeah,
way or another.
yeah.
So what happened after NYU? What?
Well, I was at NYU for about 3 years, and then I got called to go out to Minneapolis, the Tyrone Guthrie Theater,
Mhm.
which at the time was the place. I mean, it was like Mecca in the regional theater movement.
Mhm.
and I had been a huge fan of Tyrone Guthrie's. I saw every show he did on Broadway. And oh, I couldn't believe it. Of course, one day I called him when they were in New York. And I said, he actually picked up the phone. I forget, he was staying at the Algonquin. I said, can I be your assistant? And he said, oh, that's very nice of you, Mr. Shapiro, but I have an assistant. And anyway, months later, they asked me to go out there, and we moved. We had a kid by that time, and we were there for 2 years. I did about 4, 5, 6 shows, and then I went back to NYU for 10 years. But I should tell you the story of my first day teaching acting.
Yeah, please do. Yeah. Now, had you done any acting?
I did it in college at Carnegie.
Okay.
So I had my ideas about acting and what it is, and I didn't like acting, although I was very funny on the stage.
Mm-hmm.
I like getting laughs, but I couldn't do anything serious. And this, what was it? It was no, I'm sorry, it was a directing class. My first directing class. And I was talking about the class and what we would do, and talking about, because I was crazy about Tyrone Guthrie's work. And I was talking about counterpoint, visual counterpoint, how you can have a dramatic action here, but maybe something on the corner is going on or a background, and which counters the image of what's going on in the foreground. And there's done a lot in films.
Mm-hmm.
And Guthrie was the master of it. And then I was giving examples of it and examples of improvisation, which I wanted to do, and blah, blah, blah. And I mentioned Tyrone Guthrie for the first time, and was talking about his work. And a girl raises her hand. And I said, yes, Deborah. And she said, I don't want to hear your fucking analogies and your examples about, and your goddamn, what was the word? Anecdotes about Tyrone fucking Guthrie. I want to live my own life. My God. And then I thought about it seriously, and I realized, I think she's right. And from that day, I became a teacher who would never give anecdotes.
Oh, okay.
And sometimes kids beg, oh, tell us about working with no anecdotes.
Right.
I learned my lesson.
I was just about to ask you about Tyrone Guthrie. I was going to ask you for what that was like.
What were you going to ask?
No, I was just going to ask what it was like working with him.
He was a legend. He was very tall. He looked like he was 10 feet tall. He would hold his rehearsals, and his rehearsals were open to anybody who wanted to come in the door.
Really?
Yes, he felt it's that British thing, the community, and it's in Minneapolis. Let them come in and see the work, see what we do. So they would come in and see. And there was a point when I thought at a certain time they ought to give out Tonys for the best performances by a director.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he performed. It turned him on.
Mm-hmm.
One of the classic moment I caught, he was doing Volpone, and let's see, George Grizzard was playing Mosca, and Douglas Campbell was playing Volpone. And he and Douglas worked together for years at the Old Vic and up in Canada at Stratford. And Douglas came down to work in Minneapolis. And Guthrie stands up and from his theater seats, swamped by these fans of people. And he says, "Dougie, dear boy." And Douglas stops on stage and says, "Yes, Tony." He said, "Dougie, dear boy, once is brilliant, twice is genius, and 3 times is a bore." Oh, am I boring? Have I really done this bit 3 times? That's my
Wow.
Tyrone Guthrie story. He was very nice. I liked him a lot.
So your mentor, like, I mean, have you had different mentors throughout your?
Just the one, Ted Hoffman.
Right.
Yeah. But after the Guthrie, I went back to NYU.
Mm-hmm.
And was there. That's when I did like The House of Blue Leaves and Two Gentlemen of Verona.
Which you won the Tony Award for, correct?
I won, John and I won, I didn't win for directing. John and I won for best libretto, and the show did win best musical.
Okay. So how did that feel? Like, I mean, did you expect that, or was it a surprise, or what was that like?
Well, it was a surprise because all the money was on Follies, the Stephen Sondheim, Al Prince show. Yeah, we were surprised, but very happy.
So how did your career change after winning the Tony Award?
It did and it didn't. Well, I had a lot of offers to do shows I didn't want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't regret not doing any of them. And I did some shows. I did a show in London, a musical in London, which didn't work very well. I've worked with Gordon Davidson a couple of times here in Los Angeles. I did 3 or 4 shows with Joe Papp after that. And I did another show at Wyndham at the American Place Theater. I guess my heart was still in American writers or more experimental, less of the boulevard. And there was this wonderful quote by Robert Anderson. He wrote Tea and Sympathy. He did a very fine writer. He said, the problem with the theater is you can make a killing, but you can't make a living.
Mm-hmm.
And unless you have a big mega hit that you can ride on for several years and pile away with your money,
Mm-hmm.
You're living an ordinary life, you know. So, and I got tired of the whole scene. And then about that time, after 10 years, I was asked to go to back to my alma mater, Carnegie, which was now Carnegie Mellon,
Right.
and run the theater department.
Now, there, if I remember correctly, the acting teachers would say that in the first year, say, look to your left, look to your right, 2 of you won't be here next year.
Yes, we tried to stop that attrition.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they finally did stop it because their budget was such that they had to take in more students than they could possibly train.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's a little immoral. And yeah, it was very hard, but they don't do that anymore.
Right, right.
Because if you take in a class of 70, by the time the sophomore class has room for only so many actors, so many designers, so many technical departments. So that's the engine that finances the department.
Mhm.
It's quite cruel. But I enjoyed that. We did a lot of good stuff. And I liked having, I think at the time Carnegie came along to go back and head the department, I was really in a place where I would have liked to have my own theater. But at a certain point before all this, I was offered a lot of theaters to be the artistic director of it. I turned them all down.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time I wanted one, all the theaters were taken. They got their people.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then from Carnegie, I was I was there about 8-9 years, and it was one of those horrible, cold, snowy Pittsburgh days. And I was looking out the window, and I said, "Oh God, I wish the phone would ring. So phone ring, get me out of here."
The phone seems to always save you, and you're always by it at the right time.
It's like I do nothing but wait for the telephone to ring, but that's nothing actually true. And the phone rang, and I "Hey Mel, this is so and so from UCLA. Listen, we want to know if you would be interested in coming out here for a year and teaching graduate acting and blah blah blah." And I said, "Yes." So I went for a year. My wife and family stayed in Pittsburgh. I commuted a lot. And then toward the middle of the first year, they asked me if I would stay permanently.
And what year was that?
That would have been 89,
Okay.
90. And I came out in 90. And I came and everything worked out. And here I am.
So where did, well, let me ask you this. At what time did you start writing your books? How did that come about?
That's a great question. It came about kind of the minute I got out here, actually. I was asked, I got a call from a wonderful person. I forget her first name. Last name was Rosenberg. She was an editor at Harper and Row. No, what was my first publisher? Anyway, she asked me if I would like to write a book. And I said, "No, I don't want to write a book." She said, "Why not?" I said, I have a lot of assignments and exercises I use, and you put them in a book and everybody will steal them. And she said, "Yeah, but it'll be your book. They'll be your exercises." I said, "Oh, I think I'll write a book." It took me, it was very hard. But what I liked about the process is it taught me what I knew. I didn't know what I knew, if that makes sense.
Until you wrote it down.
Yeah, until I stated it.
Right.
And it took a long time. It took about 1.5 years because I had a concept for the book, which after a while didn't work. She was a very good editor. And then, of course, you have to send it out.
Now that this book is An Actor Performs, correct? The first one?
Yeah, that's the first book.
Okay.
Yeah. And then it finally got published. And then she asked me to do a directing book. And that's how I did The Director's Companion, which is the second book. But I never would have, which I enjoyed doing that book. It was like a breath of fresh air. And we just made a audio book of the acting book.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So
I'll have to, I read it when I was at UCLA. I'll have to listen to it again.
Okay, I'll tell you when it comes out.
Yeah, please do. Yeah.
So that was the books.
So what do you feel makes a great actor in your mind?
A great actor?
Yeah.
I think the question before that is what is it that makes a working actor?
Mm-hmm.
Because there I've worked with so many talented people, and it's heartbreaking because the industry doesn't want them.
Mm.
The industry doesn't need them, but they have a dream to act, and some of them are very good, and some of them go on and do work here and there, and then you see people who have risen higher, uh, people who have made it, um, and you wonder why. And it's such a chancy game of whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, let alone being great.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're great if you learn your craft and you're able to practice it uh, and play in front of an audience. Uh, and then you become more you know what you're doing, and blah blah blah. But very few people get that chance. It's a very difficult profession. It's brutal.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
And you can't dissuade anybody from it. They have their dream and they want to do it, and God knows I don't talk like this to them.
Mm-hmm.
But and even if I said, you nobody wants you. There are no jobs for you. There are 50 people just like you in every respect. And they don't care. They're going to be the one who makes it. And that's good. That's important. With that, many go into other fields and actually are very happy that they were in an acting program. They
Mm-hmm.
feel it served them very well. So,
Was there an actor that you worked with that was really mesmerizing, that you were just honored to work with and watch them discover things in the rehearsal process? And
yeah, a lot of them. That's the beauty about working and directing. I mean, it's when you see the actors certain reach, wow, something we hadn't thought about,
mm-hmm.
some moment or some thing that God knows where this came from, but it's so wonderful. We have to treasure it.
Right.
I work with Ron Liebman, and I don't know if you know him. He won the Tony for Angels in America. He played
Right.
Lord Cohen, and I worked with him, and he was that kind of actor. He would pull stuff out of the air that was inspiring,
Mm-hmm.
that you didn't know he could do or think of, and he didn't even know. Um, I worked with Sammy Davis Jr., and he was the same way.
Mm-hmm.
But his talent was in singing
Yeah.
and just reaching for certain moments, reaching for certain sounds. And he was a real lesson to work with because he used to use his full voice in rehearsal, which was difficult to stage somebody who's always using their full voice. You want to say,
Mm-hmm.
oh, Sammy, would you go over here and blah, blah, blah. Oh, can these people, blah, blah, blah. You need to stage the thing. And he didn't mind stopping, but always. And so finally, one day, I said to Sammy, why do you always have to sing at full voice? And he said, because I know my voice is here and it has to be there by the time I open. So
Mm-hmm.
he was training using every opportunity to train that singing muscle to get to the top where he wanted to be. But that's almost a different thing.
That's amazing. What, tell us about, was there a show that you directed that you felt like you really nailed it? Like you're like, this, I don't know. This is, I did it. Was there a show like that?
Yeah, that's the feeling. A show where you can say, I nailed it is one thing, but there are also shows where on opening night you sit and say, oh God, that's what it's all about. I missed the whole fucking point. That doesn't happen too often, but
Right. Right.
I thought back in the day of House of Blue Leaves, I thought I did that with that play.
And you worked, I mean, that was an original at the time
Yeah.
that had,
But I thought I did. I recently did a show. I think one of my last shows at UCLA was the Cherry Orchard, and I think I got that pretty close, at least to what I think the play is.
did you do that in the little theater?
Yeah, yeah, it was nice. Wonderful group, wonderful cast.
Now, what was it about that that was different, that you felt like you really brought out the story?
It was the language, the nuances, the subtext, the interplay. It's like a piece of music. The staging, it just seemed to harmonize. With Richard III, which I did at Lincoln Center with Michael Moriarty, I couldn't get to that point because Michael was very difficult to work with.
Mm-hmm.
Even though we had worked together at the Guthrie and times before, he was in a bad place. Two Gentlemen, for what we did, I felt satisfied. And Taming of the Shrew, I felt I nailed it, but there were people who felt I didn't. So
Mm-hmm. Well, you can't please everybody.
you can't please everyone.
Yeah. So, was there a show that you did that you were just that one, like I'll give you an example. When I was at UCLA and you were there, I directed Kafka's Metamorphosis, and that was a show I really enjoyed, and I had a lot of fun. I think it went all right. But then I tried to do Jean Genet's The Balcony, which was a disaster. And was there a show that you felt like that you were so excited to do, and you had an opportunity to do it, and it just didn't, for whatever reason, it just didn't go anywhere?
Oh, yes. I would say that, let's see, John Ware had a play that I really liked. It was called Marco Polo Sings a Solo. We did it for Joe Papp. I think that was the last time I worked there. And it had a wonderful cast. It had Joel Grey and Madeline Kahn.
Oh, wow. You worked with Madeline Kahn?
Yeah.
Wow. What
And
was that? I mean, she is brilliant.
she was nice. Just nice to work with. Just does her work. Very focused.
I mean, her comedic timing is just,
Yes.
yeah.
And who else? Christopher Walken was in it for a while. Um,
How was that working with him?
you can't direct him.
Really?
He's undirectable. He just does his thing and nothing at all.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
And who else? Sigourney Weaver.
Hmm.
Anne Jackson, who was Eli Wallach's wife. Joel Grey, I mentioned. I know it was quite a cast. And it was badly received, but what happened was Jean, my wife, said, when am I going to see it? When am I going to see it? And I knew she would hate this thing. And
Right.
I said, oh, but let it get better. Let it get better. Wait till the previews. It's closer to opening night. And after one performance in the late preview, I was walking up the aisle. This was in the Newman at the Public Theater, which is a steep banking of seats down to the stage. So I was walking up the steps to go out backstage, but I had to go to the lobby. And I see in the corner of my eye, Jean, and I thought, oh, here it comes. and I passed her. So I make believe I didn't see her, and I hear her voice. Not only pretentious, but overlong as well.
How did you feel about that review?
I thought she was right. What could I do at that point? Then,
now, before that moment, did you feel like you were you feeling uncertain, or were you like?
I felt it didn't work.
Right. Wow.
But my son Ben, I don't know how old Ben was at it. My second son, I don't know how old was he. He may have been about 10 or 11.
Mm-hmm.
Dad, when are you going to take me to see Marco Polo? When are you going to see? I want to see Marco Polo. So I said, oh, Ben, you won't like it. Oh, no. Gene said, oh, take him.
Mm-hmm.
So I took him to a matinee. And we go backstage. Of course, I said, you want to meet the actors? And they, so go backstage, and the actors come out of their dressing rooms. And I said, oh, this is Ben. And they make a circle. Ben in the center, and they make a circle. There's Madeline Kahn and Joel Grey, Sigourney, and the rest of the cast. And Madeline said, well, Ben, she had that swooping voice.
Right.
What did you think of the play? Mm-hmm. He said, well, the problem with the play is it only has 3 laughs in the first act. And the actors howled with laughter. Madeline said, that's exactly what's wrong with it.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. But the incident got back to John Guare, and he never talked to my son again.
Really?
Yes.
Oh. Now, is your son, is he doing theater?
No, but neither of my sons do theater.
Okay.
Thank God.
So what was it, what did you enjoy the process of teaching?
Yes, I did. Once I got onto, I knew what I wanted not to do. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to be doing what they were doing in New York at the time, which was, to my mind, a lot of invasive psychiatry between the teacher and the student, mm-hmm. and a lot of crying and letting out of trauma, and which all led in a certain way to sexual misbehavior.
Oh, really?
And at the time, there was a well-known teacher who actually my wife studied with for a while. he used to do these groping exercises, relaxation and close your eyes and blah, 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 and come around and feel everybody up. And
Ah,
I didn't want to do that. And that was, or I didn't want to get into a lot of, it's a lot of acting teachers really manipulate students and get into their weaknesses and their vulnerabilities, which the acting student is very easily will give to you. And it builds for really sick relationships. As a matter of fact, at one time, one of the teachers, the one I'm talking about, who did the exercises, was brought to court by a 6 or 7 women. And the judge said to the women, "Why did you let this happen?" And one of the women said, "Because we thought it would make us better actresses."
ah, that's sad.
Yeah. So I didn't want to go there.
Yeah,
I do have an exercise called the autodrama, but it's designed to escape all that.
right.
But once I got onto what I thought it should be and what I guess I taught acting more like a director
Hmm.
for a long time. And a friend of mine who is an acting teacher said, "Oh, you're just directing them. You're not teaching them acting."
Hmm.
But that's what I did for a while until I found a process. But there's a certain kind of actor I like, um, and a certain kind of actor that I don't like.
Would you mind describing those opposing positions?
Well, I mentioned Tyrone Guthrie a number of times here, but my idols in the theater that I cherished the most were 2 people. One was Guthrie, and the other was Jose Quintero. And Guthrie was all brilliant staging and razzle dazzle and visual extravaganza and wonderful speech. And Quintero, his work was very, very realistic, where you thought you were watching real people do a show, but real exciting people. Uh, and I love that quality in acting. And so I declared myself, I would be if Tyrone Guthrie and Jose Quintero had a baby, I would be the baby. Because I would like those 2 sides of the theater that I love so much to come together as one. And I was right from the beginning, and I wouldn't say the beginning, but once I went up to Stratford, Canada, and then worked at the Guthrie, I became very much, I love speech. I love language. And it doesn't have to be good American speech. It could be dialect. But I think the music of the play is in language. And so I would think that what I needed to do as a teacher was to find an organic way to act in reality, but a process where you can appreciate the author's language. Because the author's language, the character lies for the most part in language.
Hmm.
Of course, that's how it's expressed. Of course, there's movement and singing and dance, but so there's much to do about that in the acting book, An Actor Performs. But I don't teach language like a speech or language voiced person. I know when the line is being read right, everything flows. But I don't give the actor the reading, but I give them the impulse to do the reading the way I hear it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I direct basically by listening, which I tell the actor is the heart of acting, is listening.
Right.
So there's that.
Now, so what do you feel your career arc is? Like, where did you start as a director, and where are you now? Like, in your creative process, like, what is the evolution?
I started as an observer. I started as an audience. So I started as a great love of theater, with a tremendous desire to work in the theater and no idea what I could do. I knew from the beginning I wasn't an actor. I thought, you have to look like Tyrone Power, Errol Flynn. I wasn't that. And once I got a hold of directing, I knew that's what I wanted to be. And I went to school to train for that. And everything I did from then on, all the jobs, was training for being a director, learning the craft. Yeah.
Now, was there a particular concept or theme that drove your work that you gravitated towards?
You mean plays or?
Yeah, it could be plays or just, for instance, I remember when I was at UCLA, we had an opportunity to direct an original piece, and this is something that you had, that we worked on together, because the idea was, I think, we were getting very close to the Great Recession, so the economy was not doing well. We were still dealing with the effects of the Iraq War, and the idea was to create an original piece based on what, if I remember correctly, it was something to the effect of what people were experiencing in the world in terms of employment and unemployment rather, and I remember it was just kind of to get a sense of what people were feeling during that time, and that was around, I think, 2002, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and I felt like that was something that was very close to your heart at the time. It was to kind of capture the times that we were living in.
Oh, those morphed. Those morphed into the activist project. Did I call it that at the time?
I don't believe it was the activist project, but I think that's the idea, though.
Yeah, that you would study a person.
Yes.
And present them on stage or their life or something.
Correct. Yeah.
Yes, I thought that was very important for students to see how the other world lives. And I developed that further into the activist project, which is to study a person in real life,
mm-hmm.
Who is a simple person, an ordinary person doing extraordinary things. And there was a lot of good stuff that came out of it. But I think around your area, though, some people started to do show business people. Is that in your or after you? I know one of the actors did Freddie Mercury, and which I remember to this day.
I'm sorry, I missed that. Say that one more time.
One of the actors did Freddie Mercury.
Okay.
That's not what you're talking about.
No, this was about, I mean, I think it was an exploration of the fact that, you were asking us to I'm not the directors, but the actors to go out and do a character study
Yeah,
of somebody that was experiencing poverty or some type of injustice. And then we kind of, the idea was to create a piece from those stories.
oh, right. What did you do?
I don't know what I was doing, and I think that was the problem. And it was I think the timing was just, I just wasn't ready for that yet. I was still trying to understand what I was doing, and so creating an original piece at that time, I just wasn't there yet. I think intellectually, and but I don't remember, but it didn't go well.
No, how did that manifest itself?
I don't remember. I remember there was mask that I had all the actors wear. They were all the same. And then I had a coffin on stage, and I don't know. It didn't work. But and I felt like one of the issues that I was doing was I was trying to impose something that wasn't really a part of it, and it was a mistake, and it just didn't work. But it was, but I appreciated what you were doing, and I thought, and the reason I'm asking this question is because I feel like there's an underlying theme of kind of searching for social justice or something like that in your work, that you're trying to expose something. For example, you had me as your assistant director on the Inspector General,
Right.
and the Inspector General, it was really brilliant because you basically staged it so that the audience had to travel through various parts of the administration building and the theater department. And so you'd see the bureaucracy mirrored in this very cold, kind of bureaucratic environment in the administration offices of the theater school. And I mean, the statement was very, was amazing. And so my point is that I feel like you're trying to expose some injustice and hypocrisy, and I felt like the Inspector General was a part of that.
It's such a divine play. It
Yeah,
really is. And it's so eternal.
yeah,
It's if you look at the administration anywhere today, including Washington, it's the
yeah,
Inspector General.
exactly.
So what did
Yeah.
you, by the time you graduated, how did you feel about the program?
I was really, it was a very, that time that I was there was a very stressful time because one of the things that happened, just to kind of give you a brief overview, is when I was at Cal Arts and I was studying acting, that's when my first year I learned that I was losing my eyesight, and I knew I had hearing loss, but that was easier to, uh, it wasn't as much of an issue.
Mhm.
But so what happened is that my first couple of years at Cal Arts, I realized that I was losing my eyesight much faster than expected. And I had an opportunity. I was cast in a production with Richard Foreman. It was a very small group of actors from Cal Arts, and he was the guest director there. And he cast me, and I remember the first rehearsal, he had us running on the stage doing these improvisations, and I remember there was a light that was at eye level from the audience on stage, and it was right in our faces. I remember, and I remember having so much difficulty seeing, and I was worried about bumping into other actors, and I ended up just quitting, and
Mhm.
I didn't really explain why, which I feel was not the best move, in the sense that Richard Foreman, he was creating original piece. I'm sure if I had told him honestly, I said, listen, I'm losing my eyesight. I've just learned about it. I'm having, difficulty dealing with this loss. But this is where I'm at. And I think he would have uh, amalgamated what was happening to me
Yeah, of course
into
he
the production, and it was really,
yeah.
I was, I have a lot of regret around that.
Yeah.
And anyway, so around that time, I was like, I'm gonna, you know what? I'm losing my eyesight. If I can still see the entire stage, so maybe the perspective of the director, I can do that for a while. And I got to UCLA, And I started working, and I did I did The Boys Next Door. That was my first project. And then I did uh, Kafka's Metamorphosis, which I thought was the one of my better productions there. And then I did The Balcony for my thesis project, and I just made a mistake. I think that play generally fails when it's done.
Yeah, it's
And
impossible. Yeah,
did you say it was impossible?
it's an impossible play. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I should have stripped down the dialogue or did something that was more movement based, but I didn't. And it was ultimately in my mind a disaster. And so my goal was that because the Metamorphosis went really well, that I was going to invite industry people to The Balcony, and I was so embarrassed by it that I didn't invite anybody.
Mhm.
And I ended up, and really the timing was, as soon as I graduated, my eyesight diminished even more, and I just got really scared. And so I ended up working, selling TV shows for syndication. And then I haven't told you this, but because I was so, worried about making a living, and just, I just received my master's degree in directing. I was so worried. I'm like, what the fuck am I going to do? I mean, I'm running out of time. If I tried to make it in the mainstream, business, there's no way I'm going to make it at this rate, losing my eyesight. So I said, how can I make money and use the degrees I have? And so I ended up going into the adult film industry.
Oh,
And
really?
oh yeah, yeah, I did it. And it's not something I'm proud of, but I went into it, and basically I contacted some companies, and I said, I'm interested. What do you need? Do you need a director or whatever? Just came from UCLA, and so I ended up writing these screenplays uh, for that were actually high budget adult films, and we premiered them at Grauman's Egyptian Theater. And but it was a strange experience. But that's what I ended up doing. But to answer, that's the long road to getting to your question. I was very embarrassed when I left UCLA, and I did not feel like I had a right to teach, and I didn't know what to do, and I felt like I needed to just start working and making money, and then that's how I got there. So.
How long were you writing in the porn industry?
Well, I actually wrote the screenplay for Pirates in just a couple weeks. I did it after work because I was selling TV shows for syndication. So I would work all day doing that, and then I come home and write Pirates. And the director had a basic storyline because they write those movies based on the actors.
Mhm.
They have what they call contract girls, and they're signed to the studio. And so they choose the productions based on that. So he had this kind of basic framework story. So I wrote all the dialogue and wrote the screenplay. And so Pirates, and then I wrote a second one called Pirates 2 Stagnetti's Revenge, and which was the sequel. And I did that, but I also was a project manager and oversaw editing and graphic design for the company. And then so I did that from 2005 to 2008. And I had and then I just, I wanted to do something more with my life, and I was getting into a sense that I wanted to work in peace building and kind of create a different world. And so I worked basically from 2005 to 2008, and then I stopped, and then I stopped driving too at that in the summer of 2008. And so that was a transition as well. And so I just had to make some changes. But yeah, that's how long I did that.
You should write a play about that, or something about the.
I did. I started to write a one man play. I just I haven't done anything. It was just a first draft a few years ago. I wrote it in what year was it? It was 2013. Yeah, but I mean I have no idea what it looks like now. I haven't looked at it since. But Yeah, I've thought about it. I just I don't know where it's going yet. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So, how are you feeling these days?
Um, it's a scary time, you know. I and I appreciate you asking. I I'm going through probably the worst part of my vision loss. I'm at a place where I need to let go of the remaining eyesight that I had because it's so distorted and I get disoriented by the images that I see because they're just not clear. And so I'm getting to the point where I'm not I really can't even see what's on my computer screen anymore. So I'm using a screen reader, but I need to go make a full transition to complete just not using the screen at all and they call it a screen curtain, so you don't see what's on the screen at all. And so I'm dealing with that. To be honest, I have a great deal of regret for the life that I've lived, in the sense that um, I loved acting and I loved directing, and I stopped because I felt that I couldn't do it the way I wanted to do it, you know, and it was a very able-bodied way of thinking about it. You know, I didn't, maybe I had influence or maybe I didn't. I don't remember, but what I needed was somebody to say, you know, well, let me backtrack. What I was hearing from people was do it for as long as you can. And what I needed to hear from somebody to say is you can still do it. You're just going to have to do it differently.
Yes.
And I didn't do that. And you know, I had an opportunity to do stand-up comedy, and I didn't, and I wish I had done that. And so I'm kind of dealing with an enormous amount of regret that I did not stay and do the things I wanted to do, because I didn't think I could do them anymore. And that's kind of how I did it. I went like with the acting. I thought, oh, I can't do this. I better do directing. And then I go, oh, I can't do directing. I better do, video,
Hmm.
or something like that. You know, I can't do stage directing, so I got to do video. And so I kept switching rather than doing what I loved. And I have some regret around that. And then just dealing with what everybody's dealing with, the isolation, the fear of what's going to happen if one of my family members or myself contract COVID-19. Am I going to live, or are they going to live? It's what we're all experiencing collectively. But yeah, I'm doing the best that I can. I can say that things could be a lot better, but they could also be a shitload worse.
Well,
So,
I admire you for where you are and what you're doing. I think it's wonderful.
well, thank you, and
I,
you know,
I
I
okay.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I've always taken Edith Piaf's line about regret, which is "Je ne regrette rien." I regret nothing. I mean,
Right,
it'll
right.
hold you hostage, uh, but you're getting through this. It's just encouraging. And
Yeah, I'm very grateful. I have a wonderful wife and son, and if I had done the journey differently, I wouldn't have met my wife. And
yes,
so, you know, it it's just it's hard to say, but I do, I do regret some things that I didn't do because I should have done what I loved rather than doing what I thought was more practical, or I mean, I made some fear-based decisions, and part of
yeah,
the
but
whole
you
theme
wouldn't
of
have to be fearful. You had a big weight on your shoulders. And
yeah, but this, the theme of this podcast is loving beyond fear. And so what I'm trying to do now is do that, is to love beyond my fears that I have.
yeah,
And I appreciate you asking. And the other thing I want to say is, when I was at UCLA and we would have conversations, I always felt you listened deeply and were present, and there was an enormous amount of compassion and empathy uh, from you in our conversations, and I will always be immensely grateful for it. And because I
It's
felt,
wonderful to have you as a student. I really enjoyed being around you. And
thank you.
anyway, okay.
Thank you. I just, I felt supported and appreciated by you, and I thank you for that.
Okay. Well, this was really good.
Yeah, yeah. Listen, just so everybody is listening, how is there any projects that you're working on now? Anything you want to talk about, or anything, any ways that people can connect with you if they?
Sure. What you can give them my email. I've been writing a play.
Mhm,
I've written some plays before, but I've been writing a play, and I keep declaring it's done,
mhm.
and then I'll send it to a few people. A few months later, I will have rewritten it, and I tell the people, oh, don't read that, what I sent you. I have a better version. So I've been doing this about 7, 8 times. But I think I really got it now.
Mhm.
Um, it's called The Ideal Martian,
Mhm.
and it takes place on Mars. And I think, I don't know. I think it's there now. It's taken a while.
So,
So
what was the inspiration for that?
I don't know. I just absolutely don't know. I had actually, I had taken a course. There's this group called the Plato Society, which is had started at, it's for, what shall I say, older people,
Mhm.
and they give courses, and the courses are anywhere from 7 weeks to 14 weeks, once a week, and it's called a study discussion group. It's not, nobody lectures. Let's say you and I were going to in the same class, say 20th century theater. There'd be 14 of us, and there's a moderator, and each of us over 14 weeks, each person does a presentation, and what you do is you you challenge everybody with questions. So, for example, say you have Ilya Kazan. So, and we will have read about Ilya Kazan, and then you give us questions about Ilya Kazan, and we discuss it.
Mhm.
So I took some classes that were. I decided I would take classes I know nothing about, which is most things.
Mhm.
And one of the classes I took a year and a half ago was astrophysics,
An easy subject.
and an easy subject. I didn't have the math for it either, but I was very interested, and it was very difficult because it's very demanding. It needed a lot of research, and then try to decoding the textbook was enough uh, to. Uh, and I had the last chapter. I forget what it was. Oh, what next? Uh, what next in space? And the question about the last chapter was when Earth goes bye bye or extinguishes, how do you keep human intelligence alive?
Mhm.
So one of the things I did for questions is I asked the people in the class to write a letter to I said, you're on Mars, you've been on Mars for 2 years, and this is the first chance you've gotten to write a letter home, and write a letter. What would
Mhm.
that letter be? And so it dawned on me, that's an interesting question. Well, maybe I could write a play about that.
Mhm.
So it took a lot of research, and I wrote a play about being in Mars and the question of sustaining human intelligence, and how would you do that? So it's a little sci-fi-ish, but
Right.
it's interesting.
So, is it something that you've been having discussions about producing after the pandemic?
Yes, a couple of people are interested in. I would have a reading of it, but that would just be a big Zoom meeting
Yeah.
with 17 people in it. And I don't think anybody, the audience would know who was who.
Hmm.
Um, so we'll see. But it's been fun to do.
Right. Right. Well,
And
this has been fun. I really appreciate you being here, and it's been an honor and a pleasure. And everybody, please read A Director's Companion or An Actor Performs by Mel Shapiro. Great books. You can find them on Amazon or any place books are sold. And thank you so much. Is there anything you want to say to actors or directors that are aspiring right now in the middle of
keep
everything that we're
going.
going through?
Keep going. That's all I can say. Keep going.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Mel. This has been The Blind Man in Black. You can find me at blindmaninblack.com, Apple Podcast, and the YouTube channel. Now we're going to have an awkward ending, as we always do, because my screen reader does not tell me that it stopped recording. So hold on. Thank you, Mel. It was a great
Okay.
pleasure. You stay healthy and safe.
Okay, Brian. Bye.
Thank you.
Okay.